Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune. We're here to talk some Oklahoma football. There is no offseason, as our guy Josh Pate always says. Schedule finally came out for the Big 12, and Oklahoma got screwed at the end. And that's okay because they're going to the SEC. And the other reason why is because we get to go to Salt Lake City, Provo. We're all pretty excited about that. And we get to go to Cincinnati. So you can't hate on that. You cannot hate on that.
No, and you also can't hate on the fact that outside of that 2-game turnaround at the end of the conference slate there, Brandon, it's a pretty easy draw, all things considered, for Oklahoma when you look at the schedule top to bottom. As I look at the 12 games that Oklahoma is scheduled to play, I see at least 9 games that very reasonably should be wins. The 3 games that you're concerned about, naturally, are Texas, with it being the Red River rivalry, and obviously with the Longhorns having won 49-0, albeit with extenuating circumstances last year. And then, of course, BYU and TCU to close out the regular season. But outside of that, there's no reason the Sooners shouldn't be 3-0 after non-conference play, going up against Arkansas State, SMU, and then Tulsa on the road. They ought to beat UCF at home. They ought to beat Iowa State at home. They very well ought to beat West Virginia at home. And then I think you're not terribly intimidated by road trips to Cincinnati, to Lawrence, and to Stillwater against an Oklahoma State team that's presumably going to be rolling out Alan Bowman as their starting quarterback. Alan Bowman was Michigan State's third stringer 2 months ago at this time. So
Michigan's third stringer, by the way. Michigan.
Correct. So again,
you said Michigan State.
Oh, did I say Michigan State?
Yeah, I thought you said that last night too. But then it just registered with me last night because I've known Alan since he was like 5. So, because his sister played on my cousin's national title soccer select team. His dad is actually was the tight end that caught the winning touchdown for Penn State in the 1981 national championship.
Kirk Bowman.
That's right.
Wow. How about that?
Yep. I've
worn that
ring, man. I wore the ring because he wears it everywhere he goes. That sucker's huge. I'm not even gonna lie. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry. It's a Michigan because I remember when he transferred to Michigan, my aunt is still really good friends with them, and she asked me about it at that time, and I was like, that was a bad decision.
Yeah, by the way, Nebraska fans far and wide that are old enough still swear that Kirk Bowman actually dropped that pass from Todd Blackledge, but that's neither here nor there. It's a really boring home slate for Oklahoma. There are no home games outside of that season finale against TCU on Black Friday that are all that compelling. UCF comes to town, and there's an intriguing little subplot there, given that Dylan Gabriel played the first 3 years of his college career at UCF, so he gets to go up against his former team. But none of these home games are going to be must-see TV, I think, in anybody's eyes, unless Iowa State shocks us and pops off to a 4-0 start or whatever the case may be. But outside of an unforeseen circumstance, I think Oklahoma's 6 home games are all games that don't necessarily carry a whole lot of intrigue.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm having to pull up the home slate here now that you brought that up. It's just for me, and as I slowly pull this process up here, the home slate of Arkansas State, SMU, Iowa State, UCF, West Virginia. TCU is going to be a good one because I still think they're going to be good next year. Now, they're not going to be playoff good, but I think they're going to be an 8-9 win team next year. I think Chandler Morris at quarterback is sufficient enough to win a lot of games. He's a good quarterback. People need to remember he was the starting quarterback last year before he injured his knee. So, and that's not to say we all know they wouldn't have been what they were without Max Duggan. So he just did things that Chandler Morris can't do. But Chandler Morris is fast. He moves really well. He's smart. He's a coach's kid. He's going to be a problem. I think Iowa State is a good home. I like the home games of SMU, Iowa State, UCF, and TCU. West Virginia, I don't know how I feel about them because I don't know who they're going to be. You know what I mean? Now,
Well,
there's a chance all this, from the looks of it, Parker, we're sitting here and talking about Iowa State being really good next year. We're sitting here potentially talking about West Virginia, Iowa State, TCU, and maybe even SMU being somewhat decent next year. And then everybody kind of, I guess, taking back everything we've said during the offseason of, whoa, we were because it almost happened this year. Like, there were a couple of games this year where, and ultimately they ended up being mostly away games, where we thought they weren't going to be very good, and ultimately they were the best teams in the Big 12.
and that was more about Oklahoma than the opponent in those cases. But no,
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I'll tell you exactly who West Virginia is going to be in 2023. They're going to be what Nebraska was in 2022. Lame duck coach and a lot of players in that locker room that are not bought in because they understand what this season that's in front of them is about, which is having enough just cause to be able to part ways with the coach and usher in a new era within that football program.
But I do want people to understand that Arkansas State and SMU are not going to be pushovers. Like, as non-exciting as the home slate is, there isn't one team on that home slate that you go, they could cause a problem. They're gonna lay down and just let Oklahoma walk all over them. Like, there's not one team on there that you feel that way about. Would you agree with that?
I think Arkansas State should be a cakewalk. Should be. Yeah. SMU and Tulsa, those are two very capable group of 5 opponents. Those are going to be programs that have strengths that they bring to the table and challenges that they present to Oklahoma.
But when you go to Tulsa, it is going to be an OU home game there too.
Yes.
So might as well go ahead, because every time Oklahoma goes up there, it's like a sea of red. it's crazy that Tulsa, of all things, like, you would think the town would come out and support Tulsa, but the problem is they're all OU fans. So it just, everybody's a Tulsa fan unless they're playing Oklahoma or Oklahoma State in that city. So that's a problem there. When you look at that schedule, what do you think the ultimate, I guess, where do you think Oklahoma lands as far as win-loss record goes?
Right now, and I want to emphasize this and make this very clear caveat before I proceed. This is, as I see it right now, obviously not knowing what these teams' rosters are going to look like come the fall, and not knowing who not only Oklahoma but their opponents on the schedule are going to add and or lose via the transfer portal and or for other reasons, whatever those may be. So as of right now, I would say, and this is very subject to change, very fluid as the months progress and we learn more about these teams' makeup heading into the 2023 season. As of right now, I would say the Sooners are looking at 10 or 11 wins. Because again, I think there are 9 games on the schedule that they absolutely should win and that they will, because there
Yeah,
are going to be what
Parker
now?
got that talk.
Now again, like I'm not saying don't come back in October or November and be like,
Pull this clip up.
yeah, like he thought they were going 11-1. I'm just saying what I think right now does not necessarily reflect what my opinion will be a week before the season starts in September. But as of right now, I look at that schedule and I think, you know what? I feel good about Oklahoma winning 9 of those games. And as far as the 3 that I mentioned, Texas, BYU, TCU, I think they win in Provo, and the trap game in my eyes is the one where they're coming back home on the short week to play TCU, just because I think TCU is going to regress. It's obviously Thanksgiving week. Perhaps at that point, you're already looking forward to the Big 12 championship, and it causes you to kind of unconsciously look past a TCU team that no doubt is not going to be the same team that they were in 2022. It's the season that they just enjoyed is pretty irreplicable. So I think Texas is a toss-up, man. I can see that game going either way, because regardless of how good or how bad either of those two teams are when they take the field, the Cotton Bowl, it can always go either way. So the Texas game is a toss-up to me. I think they go 1 for 2 down the stretch between BYU and TCU. I'd say right now they beat BYU. They drop the home finale to TCU. They split that back end turnaround, and Texas is a coin flip to me. So I think you're looking at 10, 11 wins as things stand right now today, February 2nd, 7 months before the season begins.
Hey, Brandon's gonna say something homery right here, isn't he? I can feel it. He's thinking about it. He's gonna do her. He's gonna do her. And I am. I'm gonna say something that people are gonna say homery. Just listening to Josh Pate and all the other talking heads, I don't know how. I'm assuming it's because of what Oklahoma did in Orlando versus Florida State, shorthanded, and they came out there and just absolutely scared the crap out of a really good Florida State team that was fully loaded. And Florida State was essentially at home. And it's what we thought Oklahoma could be this year. Like that, what we saw on that field for the majority of the game. Yes, they ended up doing what they did at every other point during the season, and that was blowing the lead and losing on a last-second field goal. That's what they did. 5 straight times, I believe, or 4 straight times, whatever. Something absurd. But everything in between the kickoff and that point, Oklahoma was fun to watch. They were good defensively. They made plays that they were supposed to make. They made plays that we didn't think they could make at the same time. And they played with this confidence and aura about them that we hadn't seen for weeks. Weeks. Yeah, you saw them dominate Oklahoma State the game before they go down to Lubbock and choke that game away. But even in Lubbock, it was up and down. You saw some periods where they just looked flat out dominant. And then they went back and regressed into they don't know how to close out a game. But Florida State, against one of the top 10 teams in the country, against all odds, they went in there and played really well. And a lot of those players return, right? Like a lot of them return, and they've added some really good pieces to this team. Really good pieces. Saul McCullough, Walter Rouse. Trying to think of all the Trace Ford, Bothroyd, Andrew Anthony. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Obviously, Jackson Arnold, Peyton Bowen, PJ Adebawore, Derek LeBlanc,
Reggie Pearson.
Reggie Pearson. That they added some really good pieces. Austin Stogner, holy crap, just totally. Austin Stogner could be one of the most vital pieces of this season going forward, and I expect him to have a big year because they are going to figure out a way to use a 6'6", 265-pound tight end that ran a 4.7 40 during the timing session in the testing session before the winter workout started this year. And the fact that he's moving like that now shows you how far he's come speed-wise, that he's going to be a problem. Like that move, everybody was kind of upset when he moved to South Carolina. That was probably the best thing for him and the best thing for Oklahoma, ironically, because he got to see a different style of play, got to learn different things, got to learn how to inline block, all that type of stuff. He is going to be a problem in the Big 12. So when you add all those pieces to what you have coming back, obviously you have Jackson Arnold now backing up Dylan Gabriel. To me, if this team doesn't win 10 or 11 games, it is going to be a disappointing season. They're Oklahoma, number one. Number two, they return everybody. Yeah, they've already lost. Yes, they lost Eric Gray. They lost Harrison. They lost Wanya Morris. They lost pieces to the NFL and through the transfer portal. But what they gained and the fact that Gavin Sawchuk came in and did what he did during the bowl game, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you look at that, you've got to go, I expect winning next year. There is no such thing as, oh, it's okay if they win 7 or 8 games. Now, Brent Venables isn't going to be on the hot seat or anything because that's a step up. But to me, it'll still be a disappointing season. And you can bring this back. Bring it back in November. I will say it, and I will still agree that if they don't win 10 or 11 games this year, or at minimum 9, it is a horribly disappointing season. Horribly disappointing season if they don't at least win 9. I promise you. But I'll be disappointed if they don't win 10 or 11 because of what they have coming in and what they return from that bowl game. Like all those players coming back. They're all coming back, Parker. And if you go back and you watch that game, you have to walk away confident, right? That this is going to be a good team. Because that Florida State team was damn good. Was damn good. And they return that whole team next year. So Florida State should be really good too.
Florida State's a team that right now is getting some early college football playoff buzz from a lot of national pundits.
And Oklahoma is too. That's the crazy part about it. Like, but they are. You've had multiple national guys come out. Josh Pate and the dude from On3 come out and say that they think that is a dark horse playoffs team. They're already getting talk about it because they expect them to do exactly what I just said. They expect them to win. Am I being overzealous here?
I don't think you're being overzealous.
Well, I do have my OU bug here because I couldn't find a clean one.
The college football playoff in year 2, to me, is probably too lofty of an expectation coming off a 6-7 campaign. Now, is it within the realm of possibility? Well, you're Oklahoma in the Big 12. So theoretically, it's always within the realm of possibility.
That's fair. Yeah.
But it's not the expectation that I have. I don't think it's the expectation that you should have for this Oklahoma team. I think reasonably what the expectation should be is you're back in Big 12 championship contention, and ideally you're playing one final time in Arlington to go out on a high note in the Big 12, because I think we both expect, Brandon, that Oklahoma's going to be in the SEC in 2024 at this rate.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so I'm not saying I think they're going to be a playoff team. I just want to make that clear to everybody. Now, if they win 11 games, now we're talking playoff. But that 11 games could be they were 10-2 going into the Big 12 title game, and they win their 11th game after that. So, but on top of all that, and to kind of transition into the SEC, Oklahoma has been recruiting. They obviously ended up with the number 5 class. Taylor Wine signed yesterday, being the only piece that signed for Oklahoma, the 3-star athlete out of Bethany. Taylor Heim, excuse me. Taylor Wine, Taylor Heim. Kind of weird that you have that in one class, but you do. He's kind of a linebacker / tight end type player, super fast player, long, athletic. As a matter of fact, he announced his commitment halftime last week of his game, and I know Oklahoma was there for that in the stands, ironically. And I talked to somebody that was at the game, and they said that he did some pretty remarkable things on a basketball court. He did like a couple of reverse dunks. He caught an alley-oop. He stole the ball and did like this windmill. They said that kid is uber athletic. So that's all they care about at Oklahoma right now, and they want to get him in there and just train him up, develop him, speed, strength, and just see what happens and where he lands position-wise. It's going to start linebacker, but after that, whatever. Some people think he's going to flip over to tight end before it's all said and done and be a really good tight end for Oklahoma. On top of that, before National Signing Day, Oklahoma hosted a big junior day. And when I mean big, they had there was one 3-star there, and the rest was 4 and 5 stars. Out of all 30 guys that showed up, how insane is that, Parker? And when was the last time you could say that? I guess there was 2 3-stars because Elijah Green was there as well.
Yeah.
But when's the last time you could say that 28 were 4 and 5-star guys, and there's the other 2 3-star guys?
That's a pretty dang good batting average, I would say, when it comes to blue chip targets. And, you think about some of the key guys that Oklahoma's very much in on that didn't make it to junior day as well. Jaden Hardy planned to, had some things change late in the process, couldn't get up to Oklahoma for the visit. Williams Nwaneri, I believe, was at Missouri. He and all the Lee Summit North guys were at Missouri that weekend. David Stone obviously was at Michigan State, and that's going to be a whole can of worms, an enormous can of worms over the next few months. But that just kind of highlights the reality that, Oklahoma is in really good standing for a bunch of the guys that they hosted this past weekend, but it's not limited to that list. Grant Bricks, another guy, 4-star offensive lineman out of the state of Iowa, really likes Oklahoma. Was not there for junior day because of his wrestling schedule. But, man, when you think about how many blue chip prospects Oklahoma's already trending very well for in the 2024 cycle, the expectation can be that, when this thing gets rolling, it's going to get rolling quickly. And I think a lot of that has to do with the timeline for the likes of a lot of those guys in DFW that Oklahoma's pushing for. And we talk about it so frequently, but that's because it's so important, Brandon. The crux of Oklahoma's class is likely going to come from that geographical vicinity. Eli Bowen, Nigel Smith, Aaron Flowers, Peyton Pierce. OU leads for all those guys. Michael Hawkins, kind of the keystone in a lot of regards. That's a battle between OU and TCU right now. Mentioned Jaden Hardy. Xavier Filsamy, another guy that was on campus for junior day at the safety position. So depending on how quickly OU can really put the clamps on the guys that they're pursuing from the north side and the east side of the DFW Metroplex, man, that could have a significant ripple effect, especially because so many of those guys were on campus this past weekend all at the same time and got the opportunity to touch base with and start to build peer-to-peer relationships with a lot of the guys that came from out of state for this visit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one guy, Michael Hawkins, showed up. And I guess we need to get into that for OU fans. 2024 four-star quarterback out of Frisco Emerson for now, unless the Texas UIL deems it otherwise unapplicable for him to move or transfer there. Which is also the holdup, as Parker has reported, as far as a commitment announcement, trying to iron out all that situation right now with the UIL is priority number one for them for the upcoming season, for Michael Hawkins and his brother, obviously, a 2025 cornerback. But I was told, and we'll get your side of the story here real quick. I was told that from our Arkansas guys at 24/7 Sports over the last few weeks that I guess the vibe in Fayetteville was that he was silenced to Arkansas. And Danny West had explained that to me and all that type of stuff. But the problem is I got a buddy who's neutral in all of this and just flat covers the University of, or not the university, but the state of Texas. He covers Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. Like that's like his little region for another network. And he's a good friend of mine. And we were talking. And he was like, look, Hawk, they had a story ready when he had the announcement set for Oklahoma, because he had went out there and asked him and they gave him where he was going to go. And so he got the quotes, got the story ready. And so there's like this disconnect, Parker. Like with Oklahoma feeling good about it, with, you and another reporter having quotes and everything ready for a commitment story. And then there's a silence into Arkansas stuff that even our 24/7 guys had been talking about for a while. It's that cover Arkansas. There was, what is it? And then Briles moves to TCU. There's a Levy situation with Alabama. Levy pulls his name out of the Alabama equation. Talked to Alabama sources just yesterday, which we're recording this on a Thursday. So on Wednesday, I talked to him. They're like, yeah, he is not on the list of interviews that we have for Saban to interview right now this week for offense. So that's out. I guess clear it up on your end, Parker. What are you hearing, and where do things stand with the four-star quarterback and OU's top quarterback target at this point?
Well, looks like old misinformation is at it again, huh?
Yeah.
I think here's the deal. Here's what people need to understand about Michael Hawkins' recruitment. It's always been a two-horse race, not between two schools, but between two coordinators in Jeff Lebby and Kendall Briles. And we've touched on this in the past on the live, on the podcast, certainly on the OU Insider VIP board. But Jeff Lebby and Kendall Briles are very close. They come from the same coaching tree. They are brothers-in-law. Their styles of offense, the schemes that they deploy, are strikingly similar. And that's why, really very early on in his recruitment, Michael Hawkins kind of keyed in on Oklahoma and Arkansas as the two schools that he really wanted to hone in on. And that's because he felt at home. He felt comfortable running Jeff Lebby's system and running Kendall Briles' system because of the similarities to the offense that he was accustomed to running at Allen High School. Michael's a very smart kid. His dad's a very intelligent guy, obviously has a football background. He's got a lot of healthy guidance in his life, and they're going to arrive at this decision in a holistic manner. And it's not just going to be one factor that makes that decision. But I think the fact that he focused in on those particular schools because of how well they suited him as a quarterback tells you all you need to know about the kid and the family. They're putting football first in all of this. They care about developing Michael into the best quarterback that he can possibly be. Now, having said that, when you consider just how similar Lebby and Briles are as offensive coordinators, it stands to reason, right, that Hawkins wouldn't have a strong leaning one way or another between the two with regard to where he would rather play. And so you have to start taking into account the ancillary factors that each of their respective schools has working for them and the circumstances surrounding Lebby and Briles at their respective institutions. Here's what Oklahoma has going for them right now. The kid's a legacy. Mike Sr. played defensive back at Oklahoma. Nobody that's been following Michael Jr.'s recruitment is unaware of this. Mike played defensive back at Oklahoma in the early 2000s, played in the NFL for several years. Michael grew up an Oklahoma fan. That offer was really the only one he ever wanted. Alabama offered before OU did, and he never gave Alabama the time of day because he was waiting on Oklahoma. His dad asked him if he wanted to go up for junior day at the end of July and work out for Oklahoma and try to get that offer. And Michael said, yes, absolutely. Shows up to campus, doesn't miss a beat, doesn't miss a throw over the course of his workout. And boom, by the end of it, he's got the Oklahoma offer. And he then visits Oklahoma, I believe 4 times over the course of the fall that follows with his good friend, 5-star 2025 tight end, Devon Mitchell in tow. Now, he took about as many visits to Arkansas, but the major wrench that was thrown into all of this was Kendall Briles making the move from Arkansas to TCU. Now, all of a sudden, you have continuity in the relationships at Oklahoma that you cannot have at TCU. Yes, that relationship between Hawkins and Briles is as solid as ever, just as the relationship between Hawkins and Lebby is as solid as ever. But all of the folks that Michael's gotten the opportunity to meet and interact with at Oklahoma are still there right now. None of the folks that he got the opportunity to meet and interact with at Arkansas are in the picture now because Briles is at TCU. Moreover, his younger brother, Malik, had an Arkansas offer. That was his only Power 5 offer. Malik doesn't have those connections at Arkansas anymore because Arkansas is no longer pursuing Michael, or rather, Michael is no longer interested in Arkansas. So Malik's recruitment is kind of back to square one. Oklahoma has taken advantage of that. Jay Valai has started to build a strong relationship with Malik. He's gotten an invite to Oklahoma's 2025 junior day in late March. So Oklahoma is now making overtures to the younger brother, who is a P5 prospect in his own right. And so TCU, by simple virtue of the fact that Briles is brand new there, has so much ground to make up here. And I know that there are going to be some Sooner fans that are going to sit there and say, well, what about Jackson Arnold? I can tell you right now, Michael and his family are not worried about the possibility of coming in behind Jackson Arnold. Again, those are smart people. They are under no delusions. I don't believe that they're going to send their son off to college with the expectation that he's going to play as a true freshman. And I think the belief is that by the time he is a redshirt freshman, which would be Arnold's 3rd year on campus, and let's face it, with as special as Arnold is, as long as he lives up to the billing and avoids the injury bug, he's going to be a guy that's off to the NFL after 3 years. But I think the belief is that by Michael's 2nd year on campus, if Oklahoma were to be the choice, which would be Jackson's 3rd year on campus, Michael, because of his speed and athleticism, would be getting packaged looks, the likes of which you saw for Kyler Murray in 2017, when he was sitting behind Baker Mayfield. So Michael Hawkins, if he pledged to Oklahoma, wouldn't be sitting there twiddling his thumbs for his first 2 years on campus. He'd have the opportunity to get in there, spend a year, probably redshirting, learning the system, developing that comfort. And then in year 2, you'd probably start to see Lebby and the Sooners work him into the offense a little bit in certain packages. And so right now there is so much that Oklahoma has going for it because of the element of stability and continuity that they've been able to cultivate with Michael and with his family over the course of this recruitment that TCU does not have. And there's going to be a mountain to climb for TCU to establish that same level of familiarity that OU already has. So, yes, it's about Lebby and Briles, but because those two guys are so similar, and because they've been recruiting Hawkins on such similar timelines, you have to start taking a look at everything else that comes into play for Oklahoma and for TCU. And when you take a step back and you look at the big picture, I think Oklahoma has a lot more going for them in this recruitment as of right now than TCU does. And until TCU can start to make some headway and probably get Hawkins back on campus again, start to get him comfortable with the environment down there in Fort Worth, they're not going to be positioned as well as Oklahoma.
No, I mean, they do. They've got a lot of ground to make if you're Briles and TCU. I guess the question is how much does the location help them? Being that they're right down the road. Obviously, with Hawkins' father being an OU and being an OU former OU player, obviously with Hawkins being an OU legacy, that helps OU quite a bit in this situation, you would think.
Yes, and I want to point out one other thing as well. This is a leg up that Lebby has on Kendall Briles in
They
this
played
head-to-head
together.
battle. Lebby played with Mike Hawkins Sr. They were members of the same recruiting class at Oklahoma. So their relationship goes back 20 years. They've known each other that long, since they were 18. So I think it's safe to say that maybe the relationship isn't 100% better or more established between the family and Lebby as it is between the family and Briles, but Hawkins Sr. and Lebby, they go way back. And you can't say the same about Dad and Kendall Briles. All right. So
Right.
that, I think that is the one thing, the one advantage right now that Lebby has over his brother-in-law as they fight this battle out on the recruiting trail.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I think at the end of the day, I think he picks Oklahoma. I think it's just, a matter of when, not if. I guess the other thing is when he does end up picking Oklahoma, in our opinion, or if he does end up picking Oklahoma, how big of a domino effect is that? And I think that's something Oklahoma fans would love to know. From my opinion, especially in that 120 Highway 121 North section that Oklahoma is kind of blocked off as like Southern Oklahoma in their minds, and they go in and they treat it as such. I think it is a big domino effect at that point. I think you're going to see a lot of movement, maybe potentially with an Aaron Flowers, 4-star safety out of Forney, because Xavier Filsaime follow his training buddy.
To me,
and their dads are friends, like all that type of stuff.
Well, and that's what people need to understand. Hawkins and his dad have a lot of relationships and a lot of influence in that neck of the woods. And to me, it starts with 3 guys: Nigel Smith, Peyton Pierce, Eli Bowen. I think if Michael Hawkins is a Sooner, those 3 are absolutely Sooners as well. And I already have OU crystal balls in for all 3 of them. So, I think they're coming to OU one way or another as things stand, but I think certainly getting a commitment from Hawkins could help accelerate that timeline for the other three.
No, I agree. I think on not only that, I think Caden Durham out of Duncanville would be somebody to watch at that point, potentially. Obviously, Bryant Wesco, um, out of Midlothian, 4-star wide receiver, and also another Sooner legacy, by the way, who we both feel is close already. Like I talked to somebody last week that feels like, oh, it's just he's right on the cusp right now, right on the cusp. They just got to keep, oh, you just got to keep poking and prodding, and they think that this thing will eventually crack and some momentum will be built. I think the better question is who will be the first to jump on board in 2024?
There's so many possible answers, Brandon. Like,
Well, think of all the new OK Preps offers is what I would do.
yeah, well, even like February's a dead period. That's the thing. So as we head into the month of February, I don't know if we see a commitment this month. I think March is where it starts to kick into gear for Oklahoma. I think March is where you'll start to see the dominoes fall. And I think it very easily could be Aaron Flowers. I think it very easily could be Bryant Wesco. I think it could be Peyton Pierce. There's a chance it's Eli Bowen. Obviously, Michael Hawkins has as strong a chance as any. And there are guys that we haven't even talked about yet that could come into play as far as early commitments are concerned. Isaiah McMorris is a brand new offer who loves Oklahoma and Emmett Jones. So I agree with you, though. I think it'll be somebody relatively local. And the Michael Patterson McDonald offer, which we talked about on OU Insider Live earlier this week, that's definitely hey, he's definitely a candidate. I think as is Zadavian Sims as well. And that's a guy that I know you've long touted as somebody that could be early to the table with a commitment in the class of 2024 for Oklahoma.
Yeah. I mean, I might go Bryant Wesco or Aaron Flowers at this point. I mean, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of different variables. Who was your top pick?
Who was my top pick? I just said it and I forgot it.
I don't remember who my top pick was at one point. Yeah, I know you just said it too, but I was sitting here thinking about who I think would be now.
Final answer.
Oh, here we
Still
go.
rolling
Who
with
wants to be
Hawkins.
millionaire. All right. Who wants to be millionaire? All right. You need a lifeline. You need a 50-50 here.
No, still rolling with Hawkins. I
All
think.
right. And who did I say? Who did I say a couple? No, it was about a week ago.
Who did you say about a week ago? I think it was Flowers that you picked. Was it not?
No, I think it was Jaden Hardy.
Okay.
But he didn't make it. He didn't make it on the. And if you see the door open, it's not a ghost, it's a boxer. So people watching, and she's got a toy, so she runs through the house, hoping somebody will grab it out of her mouth and play fetch with her, and that's what she's doing right now because nobody's paying attention to her. Yeah, I think it was Jaden Hardy, but I think I'm gonna go with Flowers. I think I'm going to go Flowers or Wesco. So I think that's my final answer as well. I'm going to go with Bryant Wesco, final answer. And you'll stick with Michael Hawkins. I do think they have somebody commits in the month of February.
Really? Okay.
I know it's a dead period, but they can still talk to him on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And if they did show up to that junior day, what's going to change between now and March? Honestly. So
It's fair.
I think maybe one, and I probably end up being wrong, but I know Oklahoma's pushing because they want to start getting somebody on the board so they can get some momentum going. So we'll see how all that goes. As far as these OK Preps offers and not just scholarship offers, but preferred walk-on offers. We talked about this a little bit last night on the YouTube Live. What type of, I guess, impact can that make for Oklahoma in the years to come? And do you expect, because I know I do, I expect them to continue to do this each and every year, but do you expect them to make it a priority to get as many preferred walk-ons out of the state of Oklahoma, out of the state of Texas, bring them in, and probably the state of Kansas, bring all those guys in every year and see where the chips fall once they start getting developed and strength and speed built up and all that type of stuff? And I guess out of this year's preferred walk-ons that we've seen publicly on Twitter announce, who are the ones that you think will eventually or could potentially make an impact for OU?
Yeah, well, I think emphasizing the preferred walk-on pipeline from within the state lines is a phenomenal concept, and something that not Brent Venables and his staff have not only conceptualized but brought to reality, and something that needed to happen, something that needed to be reaffirmed and reestablished. And I think they're up to 9 in-state PWOs, if I'm not mistaken, including a guy that's nationally ranked in Andrew Heinig, and including a couple of guys in Caleb Snyder and Cale Fugate, as well as Chapman McCown, that had FBS offers, scholarship offers elsewhere. So when you keep in-state kids home within state lines in Norman, Oklahoma, with preferred walk-on offers, then what you know is going to happen at the very minimum is you're going to have a bunch of guys in that locker room who are going to push up your culture from the bottom up, right? Because those guys, because of their status with the program, because of the fact that they're preferred walk-ons, they're not showing up with the expectation that they're ever going to play a meaningful down at the University of Oklahoma. They're working toward it, no doubt. But if they haven't cracked the field by year 2 or 3, they're not batting an eye at it. The scholarship guy would be, but those preferred walk-ons, the guys that have only ever dreamed of wearing the crimson and cream, they're just trying to find their way onto the field. They're just trying to find some avenue with which they can run and get playing time eventually. And so those guys, at the very least, are going to show up and work their tails off to try and beat somebody out, to try and prove that they're better than or more hardworking than a scholarship guy and more deserving of a spot on the depth chart than the guy opposite them. And I think you can't have too many of those guys in your program. And especially, I know not all of Oklahoma's preferred walk-ons have come from within the Sooner State, but I think especially when you're keeping in-state guys in Oklahoma, at Oklahoma, that's a net positive for your program, no matter how many of those guys ultimately end up playing meaningful snaps in the Crimson and Cream. There will be guys that do. And every single one of those guys that joins that class as a PWO is going to be looking at what Drake Stoops has done, or what Brian Mead did, or what Gavin Freeman has already accomplished in 1 year with the program. And they're going to take that as a personal challenge, and they're going to try to rise up individually to attain that level of stardom and that cult following that follows a guy like Stoops or like Freeman in Sooner Nation. And so again, regardless of whether any of these guys ever play a meaningful down or not, this is 100% a net positive for the program. And if you can get one guy, even just one guy every year, that ends up being a way better player than anybody could have anticipated, that ends up in the starting rotation by his third or fourth year in the program, that ends up being a guy that contributes meaningfully in an OU uniform, that makes it all the more worth it. You're muted there.
Yes. No, there's a player out of Turpin that everybody seems to love, offensive lineman. I think his name Bat. What's his first name? Drew Bat, right?
Drew Bat
Is that
from
correct?
Turpin.
Drew Bat. Yep. And 6'8", 260 pounds. You watch him play basketball. You watch him move. He played 8-man, obviously, so it's a little different. But when you watch that kid move, you can't help but see some sort of potential there if Beatonbow can develop him into. And I know he is one that they view in Norman as a guy that could end up being a baller at Oklahoma at some point. So, I mean, if you can get one guy every cycle from that walk on to be a player that fills in a position of need and does it really well, I think you're winning. Right? I mean, that is a big win. And then ultimately, like you said, in the weight room, they're challenging these guys on scholarship, pushing them. They're making the scout team way better because you've got really good guys. You don't have to use your guys, your scholarship guys, to go run routes, potentially get injured, potentially ruin your depth. And you got these scholarship guys that, or these walk-on guys that want that. They love the program. They just want to be a part of it, and they want to work their way up the system. And you never know what's going to happen, especially at Oklahoma. I mean, you've seen some really big time walk-ons over the years, whether it's Baker, trying to think the tight end from Weatherford back in the day that was a walk-on. Gosh dang it, he played against my brother in high school too. He was really good from like 2008 to 2011 ish. And then they were trying to think of some other walk-on guys. And you think, oh, obviously Dominique Whaley, the running back, was really good before he broke his leg. I mean, they've had some really good walk-ons show up and just light the world on fire at Oklahoma. And I mean, you've got Tease was a decent, obviously Nick Basquin. I mean, there's a lot of walk-ons over the years from the state of Oklahoma that OU's hit on and ended up winning ball games for them. So this whole deal, I think, is huge for OU moving forward and helping Venables build the program up ultimately long term, in my opinion. I love the Bigsby duo as well because I think they're going to bring just a winning attitude to whatever position they're going to play, and obviously defensive back and safety. But I think they're going to bring winning to the scout team. They're going to be a problem for a lot of guys, and they're going to bring a winning attitude in the weight room that is going to help push somebody else that may be lacking in that area, which will ultimately help OU on the field, in my opinion. Finally, before we close this thing out real quick, we have to talk about it.
Do we?
How do you go from beating the number 2 team in the country, like not just beating them, literally throttling them at home, to playing like dog crap again in a packed house? Packed house. The atmosphere was ridiculous. How does that happen?
I've given up trying to figure out this basketball team, Brandon. I've given up. I've thoroughly done trying to make heads or tails of what type of team Porter Moser has in year 2 at Oklahoma. They just lost by 27 to TCU, turned around and scored the biggest victory for an unranked team over a top 2 team in the history of college basketball, only to get shellacked in front of a raucous home crowd by their intrastate rivals.
Is there a
3 days
leadership
later,
problem
or 4 days
on that
later.
team? Is there a leadership problem on that team?
Is there a leadership problem? I think
there's got to be, because Bama still doesn't touch the court, and he's one of the best players they have. Doesn't make sense. You got that, what is it, the Schroeder dude out there running around looking like a walk-on. How he throws him in there before Bama, unless Bama, they're trying to redshirt Bama, which now I can understand at that point for next year, so he can be the guy next year. Now I can get behind that, and that's assuming has Bama already redshirted, I guess is the question. I don't know his backstory 100%. So there's a lot of questions here, like what is going on.
Well, the win over Alabama was just the way they played against Alabama that day was inherently unsustainable. They played a darn near perfect game, and you knew it wasn't going to be quite like that the whole rest of the season for Oklahoma. It wasn't like they were going to roll out every single evening from there on out and look the same way that they did against the Crimson Tide. They had a lot.
Half that,
they had a lot go their way, but to regress the way that they did, as sharply and as abruptly as they did, just 4 days later, is astonishing. And they are an enormous enigma. And I'm just glad I'm not on the selection committee, and I don't have to try and stack Oklahoma's resume up against 7 or 8 other teams that no doubt have a lot of the same themes and narratives that have followed them over the course of the college basketball season to date, and have to make tough decisions splitting hairs between them on Selection Sunday. I don't think Oklahoma's making the tournament. I think the win over Alabama is a nice feather in the cap for Porter Moser, but all the positive momentum that you accrued was instantly undone by that home loss to Oklahoma State. And now I'm not sure if it carries the same weight with the committee that it would otherwise, seeing as how it's sandwiched in between 2 quite ignominious losses.
I mean, number one, it's just you play half as good as you did against Alabama and you beat Oklahoma State, but you didn't even do that. Number two, last night was the first night. Here it is. I watched him just ream Tanner Groves over and over and over for his lack of trying or want to on the offensive boards. Like literally was reaming him and was pulling him out because of it. But that's been a problem this whole year. Is he's not strong enough, nor is he built right to be a post player that could be dominant. And I know people want to say, well, then he doesn't need to be down there, blah, blah, blah. Ernie Abercrombie led the Big 12 in freaking rebounds, or Big 8 in rebounds, as a 6'4" power forward in 1995. He was Charles Barkley. He wanted it. He blocked out and he wanted it. That essentially is the issue. Go back and watch when the ball goes up. The only person that's always down there trying to get a board is Jalen Hill. That's it. Your 6'10" power forward / center, your 5 is up there roaming the 3-point line like he's a freaking 3 or 4 trying to do whatever he's got to do. And your 4 is down there trying to get a board. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense, man. I get that he wants to be a stretch power forward. I get it.
and he can shoot. I'll go with him on that. But you're the biggest dude on the court for your team. When the ball goes up, sprint your happy ass down the lane and go get a rebound. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong, Brandon. You're not wrong.
Okay. That is the biggest issue. They don't win the rebounds, and they allow the opponent to have too many offensive rebounds and second chances. Way too many. And that costs them. It cost them again last night. Oklahoma State misses. They get the rebound. They go back out. They swing it. Wide open three. Bam. Chances are when you're playing Division I basketball, if you give a team two chances, they're going to make one of two. Them's the odds because they're that good. I hope this team figures it out at some point, because if they don't, it's going to be an embarrassment after what they brought in, because they were supposed to be a team that had a chance to cause a problem in the Big 12 this year. And they've done none of that. They've just been a problem for themselves. I hope they figure it out. I hope Porter figures it out before he exits stage left to Notre Dame. Actually, if he doesn't keep winning, he's not going anywhere. So he's stuck at Oklahoma. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Students podcast. If you're not a member of this YouTube channel, subscribe right down there. What are we at right now as far as numbers go?
About 8.5K.
Okay. Well, let's try OU fans, try to get us to 9K right now. This is 4 months in that we've started this channel. So the fact that we're at 8,500 is really good. We would love to make it to 9 or 10K before spring. Before spring, the spring game, April 22nd. And I feel like that's a lot of leeway. We should be over the 10K at that point. We should. But if you can get us there, let's go. We appreciate everything you guys do. We appreciate you listening or watching this podcast. If you're not a member of OU Insider VIP, we've had almost 270 new subs in the month of January. And we would love to have you. Right now, 30% off. $75 gets you a whole year. It gets you all 250 24/7 VIP sites. That means if you want to go check out Alabama and their offensive coordinator position opening, if you want to go check out Texas A&M and who they're recruiting against Oklahoma or Texas or Georgia or LSU or Arkansas or USC or Clemson or whoever, Michigan State is a big one now because of David Stone. I mean, and we didn't even get into that, by the way. We'll get into it in the next podcast with Oklahoma offering his best friend, and then Michigan State doing the most insincere thing possible and offering it right afterwards. So, anyways, yes, you can go check out all that for $75, literally $30. It's regularly priced at like $109. So you're getting a deal. And then if you stay with OU Insider for 1 year, so if you sign up on February 2nd, 2023, and you re-up on February 2nd, 2024, February 2nd, 2024, you will get Paramount Plus along with all of 24/7 Sports and OUinsider.com. That means you're getting $250 worth of value, literally for half the price. It's worth it. Maverick, Tulsa Kings recorded or obviously filmed in Oklahoma. You have all of the Mayor of Kingstown with Jeremy Renner. You've got 1883, 1923, all of them. Man, it's amazing. So sign up. We'd love to have you. We're blessed to be able to do this for you guys. And we can't thank you guys enough for being on OU Insider and being on this YouTube channel. All right, that's going to do it for Parker Thune. My name is Brandon Drumm. You guys have a blessed day.